Welcome to the BJJ Mental Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today we have Dan Lukehart. He's a Jiu-Jitsu black belt, the owner of Brea Jiu-Jitsu in California. He's one of the co-founders of the IBJJFrankings.com. He talks more about what the site is about. And many times we talk about entrepreneurship, life, and I feel this time we spent a lot of time talking about jiu-jitsu. He's a jiu-jitsu nerd. I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd, so we did spend a lot of time talking about jiu-jitsu. And recently he was at the IBJJF The Crown with his student Nolan Stewart, who won his division and had a great performance. So we talk about that. We talk about his experience, how was the show, and we talk about the jiu-jitsu scene, competition scene, and studying jiu-jitsu. So it was a fun if you're a jiu-jitsu geek and like to talk about jiu-jitsu and learning process and stuff. So it was a fun interview. So also I'm representing here for people who are watching on the YouTube channel, the BJJ Mental Coach. I'm representing wearing my t-shirt, New Hope Regeneration. One of my partners, they got me back on the mats back last year, 2024. Well, the end in 2023, I was dealing with some major neck issues that teaching was a problem. Don't even think about, I wasn't even thinking about competing. And doctors talking about surgery or not. And I said, you know what? I got nothing left, so I'm going to give it a try. And in 2 months after that, with the stem cell therapy, the treatment, it really, really helped me. And man, in 2 months, I started to move my neck, and that helped me to get back on the mats. So I love promoting them because it helped me and maybe some of the masters competitors that have been dealing with some neck issues. Maybe you can give it a try. NewHopeRegeneration.com. Also, I'm wearing the hat jujitsutribe.org. It's a, it's a nonprofit organization I co-founded in 2010 with the mission to inspire, impact, and improve lives, utilizing jiu-jitsu as a personal and social development tool in Brazil and the US. So if you want to be a supporter, make sure you check it out, jujitsutribe.org. You can find more stuff about, I do a little bit of everything, so you can take a look at Gustavo Dantas BJJ on my Instagram. There's a link tree there with a lot of different things that I do. And one of them, as you already know, the BJJ Mental Coach, the BJJmentalcoach.com. I've been adding some blogs, which is something I haven't done in many, many years. So you can check it out. See, we have a bunch of, maybe right now we're recording this December 2025. So maybe you have right now maybe 7 or 8 articles there. So welcome to check it out. Also, if you're a mastery competitor, take a look at the BJJ Mental Coach Masters community. I have exclusive content, master classes, strategy labs, study group with about books that I'm studying, sharing the growth. So if you want to learn more about the bjjmentalcoach.com, and that's about it. Hope you enjoy the interview. Let's go. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Great to be here.
So let's start with a little more recent event. Recently, we had the Crown. You had your student Nolan having a great performance, and he had a great year too. So talk a little bit about how was your experience with the event and his performance as well.
Yeah, so my experience with the Crown was very positive. It is only kind of recently where we've been kind of doing with my students these like super fight type events. And yeah, it definitely has a different feel. You have an all access pass where you have, access to every part of the floor when nobody else does. It's definitely a very different type of atmosphere over your normal tournament. And it's kind of nice to be showcased. But at the same time, it does kind of remind me of the kind of semifinals and beyond of the major tournaments, which kind of is taking upon this more like kind of exclusive feel where they're cutting the lights, they're having the professional lighting come on in. It kind of has that similar feel to it. But it was a very positive experience. I mean, there's a red carpet. I mean, we go from basically nothing to a red carpet in a blink of an eye, so to speak. So nothing but positive things to say about the crown, which I really like this idea. I'm a big proponent of mixed weight classes, and the Crown, I think out of more practical need where you can't offer 20 grand plus second place prize and third place prize to, 9 divisions, it adds up really quickly. I think that's kind of like the practical motivator behind it. But I really enjoy mixed weight classes because you can see matches that might not normally take place. And in addition to that, what I really liked that they did this year with the Crown is they invited some up and coming athletes. It wasn't just like the top ranked black belts, which frankly, we've kind of seen those matches over and over and over again. So by including like Mateo Cardona, like Jose Steve in this, and Luis Victor, we got to see these like really incredible matches that would have just maybe taken place at an international open and given it like the kind of attention that it deserves. So I like Crown in that aspect. And one of the things that I was thinking about with the Crown is like, where do we slate this in terms of prestige? Because I think it's kind of like still up in the air where it kind of falls in. And kind of what I've concluded is that it's above the three of the four Grand Slam events, but below Worlds. I think that's like a pretty good place to slot that in. But at the same time, some of these divisions could easily be harder than winning world championships. It's definitely like you don't have a warm-up round or two in these tournaments. You're
True.
like right out of the gate, you're going with somebody who's elite. And that's another aspect of the tournament. This is very interesting to adapt to where it's not quite super fight, where everybody's just kind of not managing their gas tank over 4 matches. It's just like blitz, blitz, blitz over one match. There's a little bit more of that dynamic in Crown, which makes it a little bit interesting to see how you modify your game to be successful in that. So, like to answer your question, I thought that the Crown is a fantastic event. I kind of wish that the IBJJF would pivot their strategy a little bit to paying the athletes because they've clearly been receptive to the criticism that they don't offer enough money for their athletes. They are expanding. At Worlds you can win money. With the some of the pro events you can win money. But I think the way that they have it is that, like, by achieving at the international opens and at the Grand Slam, some of which do offer money, that you get an invitation to win all of the money that we give away. That's one aspect of the Crown, even though we won this year and we got all the money, that I don't like. I think that they should focus their attention, their financial allocation for paying people, and just make it their bread and butter, which is the tournaments. I think they should just pay for like pans, for example. I think they should redistribute that money. But this is kind of like I have a lot of thoughts on Crown, clearly, and that's another aspect that I think would reduce the criticism that the IBJJF gets related to not paying their athletes because the average athlete cannot sign up for Crown. They don't realize that they're giving away many hundreds of thousands of dollars in this event, and it's one day, one event, and most people aren't invited. I think kind of like pivoting their strategy to, pay for some of the winners of the more traditional tournaments would make the average person feel like they have access to that money. Whereas Crown is a very, very exclusive type of opportunity. And even just being invited to the thing is very challenging to achieve. So that's like another aspect of the Crown, kind of encapsulating my full thoughts. As far as like the specifics of Nolan, I thought it was a very, very interesting path that he had to go through. He had to go through Hobson No Break, who's the open weight brown belt world champion. He had to go through Lucas Hulk, the match that I was most worried about, a former world champion, and then go through the reigning defending two-time world champion Adam Warzinski. That's not a very typical tournament path. You normally have, as I mentioned, a little bit of like a guy that you're going to kill and you can kind of warm up. It gets a little harder. And then maybe there's two elite matches, I would say, if a major tournament. And it was basically three elite matches back to back. And watching all of those guys backstage, I mean, I posted this on my Facebook that I think people underestimate what an adult black belt 10-minute elite match takes out of these elite athletes. I mean, they were, after their first match, They were just like gassed on the floor. I mean, incredible amount of physicality, strength, conditioning, endurance work that needed, that's with any tournament, but even more so three back-to-back elite practitioners. So yeah, each one of those was its own world that we needed to adjust for and get ready for. And I mean, it couldn't have gone better.
And tell us a little bit about Nolan's mindset. That's one of the things that we talk about here, too, about the mental aspect of competition and how it was for him mentally, emotionally going into the competition and throughout matches, how usually he handles this. I mean, you've been teaching him for a long time. So how has him been evolving in his mental and emotional part of the journey?
Yeah, like the mental aspect, specifically that part of the mental aspect. I mean, you could take that question and answer it so many different ways. I can answer how is he feeling 1 hour before the tournament? How is he feeling 1 month before the tournament? You know, how was the mental uh, coaching, if you will, from when he was 9 years old all the way there? So there's like many different ways in which you could answer that.
Different phases, right, on his journey, too.
So, like, I would say that I'm not a coach that coaches with cliches, if you will. Like, I don't I do address the mental thing, but I do it a lot more through example and through slow absorption day in and day out. This is kind of going back to like childhood. I don't sit and gather the kids around and lecture them about like the mindset that we need. I'm very subtle. I'm very conscious of the mental coaching that I'm doing, but I'm very subtle with how I teach it. And I always give the student, whether a kid or adult, the option of not listening to what I say. You know, I'll provide a little like suggestion, a little nudge in this direction. And if they choose to take it, that's on them. And then I'll kind of try and nudge them over time. Sometimes I nudge through humor. Sometimes I nudge through my words. Sometimes I nudge through my actions. So this is kind of like addressing kind of my coaching style in the long term with Nolan, which is, and it's amazing how similar we ended up, not because I sat there and made him memorize these lines and creeds that I believe in, even though I have these things that I believe in. It's just like so amazing to me that his attitudes have been apparently shaped so much through my example and through like slow nudging over time, because it's quite remarkable how similar we are in this aspect. So more along the lines of like the recent. So that was kind of like the long term. So let's move up to like what does a top competitor go through when they're about to, you know, go against a world champion on a big stage where the lights and every attention is on you. I mean, I could say that his comment was, I'm nervous. And he never tells me that he's nervous. I mean, there's been a couple of times, especially with the kind of feature. You know, it's not a tournament. Your tournament, you're kind of anonymous. You know, when there's a feature, your whole like face is on the scoreboard of the pyramid or wherever the event is, and everybody is watching your match, and the lights are out, and it's like a tournament. The sound of the tournament is a little bit more like the crowd erupts, the crowd is silent, the crowd erupts, the crowd is silent. Whereas at a tournament, it's just this kind of like din of people yelling over 12 mats. It's definitely a different sensory and emotional experience doing kind of more a super fight or in the later rounds of a major tournament, because they, as I mentioned, they also have that kind of super fight, all eyes on you quality. And he's only really told me he's been nervous 2 or 3 times. I always know he's nervous, though. Anybody that says they're not nervous is just a liar, to be honest with you. Or they have such a amazing disconnect between what's
Hmm.
going on and themselves. But I think that would form an outlier. I think that most people are just people, just like you and I and our students and everything. They're just normal people that go through the whole gamut of emotional states, and definitely nerves are a part of that. And I mean, there's not the only thing that you hope to do when you're nervous is calm the nerves a little bit through a really, really great warm up. Because once you start doing jujitsu, as probably you, I, and everybody else knows, there's no more nerves anymore. It's really the lead up into the match where it's the lead up that makes you nervous, not the actual match itself. So by doing a very, very nice warm up, which includes a bit of hard sparring, it can kind of reduce but not eliminate those nerves. And those nerves can serve to help you or hurt you. I mean, this is not just with Nolan, this is just with anybody, kind of the generic advice that I'll give maybe to a kid, which is like, these nerves, you can harness them to be, and that adrenaline that those nerves produce to be a little bit quicker. Like basically a caffeine-like effect where your mind is a little bit sharper, where you're a little bit faster to respond to the situations, or you can be paralyzed by the nerves, and the nerves can just drive you into indecision in your actions. So the nerves are kind of like an asset in this way. So, like, just to basically answer your question, like in the short term, he was definitely feeling a little nervous, especially when you're going out against Lucas Barbosa or Adam Morzinski. And 100% that this is your moment to break through. And it's not even just winning a tournament. Like he won Pans at 2025, and there was a lot of recognition for that, but absolutely nothing like Crown. And we knew that going in because of the path. If you look at the path for when he won Pans in the super heavyweight division, you look at the people that he would have to go through, and it's like, I don't even think people that care that much if he beats these people because they don't even know who these people are. It's not saying anything about their skill.
Mhm.
It's saying about how much people like know them. Like what is their social media following? How much name recognition do they have? What is this going to do for your career? So when you're just looking at the path for Crown, you understand under no doubts that if you're successful with this will be a breakout moment career-wise. So I mean that adds another layer of emotional complexity to it. You know that you can beat this person. I knew that no one would likely submit Adam Orzinski, and he knew it too. But it's your turn to go out there and do it right at this moment. And that's when the nerves kind of come in. It's one thing to sit there on your training mats or on your sofa and say, I can do this. It's another thing to be in that emotional state, to be in that sensory experience of the whole thing and then managing that. And I think my exact words is when he told me this, and we have a very defined warm-up routine that we do every time. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. Starts with massage or foam rolling just to kind of lengthen the muscles. And then progressively, we start with a nice flow roll, basically drilling. We do that for 6 minutes or so. Then we take a 10, 15-minute break. We do it again a little harder. And then right before we go really, 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 really hard, which sucks for me because I'm in my 40s and not a super heavyweight, not a heavyweight, which is always, oh man, I was so sore after Crown. Because another aspect of Crown, let me go back to the emotional thing, is that there's so much time in between each match that it's like an hour and 30 minutes that you actually need to warm up again. So you're having, 45 minutes is about like what you want to push it to without like moving around again. You can kind of go and sit down, that your heart's still pumping, your body is literally still warm. So having to warm up, hard rounds to get them ready for three hard things. Oh man, my shoulder and upper rib are still hurting from that because, there's not me biting down, grinding my teeth and going, no, young man, you're not going to do this. That 40, you just break when that happens. So anyways, back to what I was saying about the emotional state is that I said, we're going to go through a warm-up routine, and the warm-up, especially when we go hard, will reduce but not eliminate those nerves that you have. Those were my exact words related to that. So yeah, I think this is a common experience. I remember when I was a brown belt or so, just either talking with Keenan or hearing Keenan's interviews that just said how nervous he was before every match. That really kind of hit home with me because he doesn't look nervous in any one of his matches. He looks cool as a cucumber when he was competing. But I think internally, we all kind of go through the same things.
For sure. So let's talk about the beginning of jiu-jitsu. How did you run into jiu-jitsu? What year? did you start,
Me,
and how
I
was the
started
beginning?
January 2006. So
Okay.
I'm almost at 20 years personally. I ran into it the way that a lot of people ran into jiu-jitsu of my generation, which is the Ultimate Fighter came out in mid 2005 and
Hmm.
2006. And we watched the Ultimate Fighter, and they were in a phase where they were trying to rebrand mixed martial arts as something more than a barroom fight. And they place such emphasis on jujitsu and the technical aspects because that kind of worked with how they were trying to rebrand these as martial artists. I saw that as well as my entire generation, and we flooded the jujitsu academies. I like to refer to my generation as the Ultimate Fighter generation. I kind of segregated out. We have the 1993 generation that joined after Hoist. Before that, we have like the really grassroots guys that were usually converted martial artists from like kung fu, taekwondo, that listen to Horion and watch the Gracie in action tapes. So that's kind of like the OG generation in America. Second is the UFC Hoist Gracie generation, and then the Ultimate Fighter generation, which is mine, and then so on and so forth. I kind of like to think of it this way because we have, especially for those first three phases, some explosive growth at each one of those. So that's when I'm never short on words with my answers. So 20 years is the short answer to your question.
Were you exposed to any martial arts, or jiu-jitsu was the first one?
No, and I definitely was not ready to do grappling like when I was in high school. I started when, how old? 21 years old or so. And uh, before that, you could not get me in a singlet or do any
Hmm.
type of grappling to save my life. I found jujitsu the time that I was emotionally mature enough to be able to do grappling with another human. And then I fell in love with it, just as most of us, listening to the podcast have done. It was kind of a love at first sight. There was some things that I was juggling. I wanted to be a runner. I was juggling my career at the time. Something that when you start in your early 20s, you really need to navigate through, which is you start when you're a college age, have no responsibilities living at home, and then you go through that 10-year span and you meet a girlfriend, you get a real job, you need to focus on your career, you start to have kids and a mortgage and all that, and being able to sustain jujitsu through that is very challenging. That's the challenge of starting when you started what I did, which most people back then would say, you're young, you're 21. We got a 21-year-old in the academy. These days, to make it to the highest level in adult black belt, you probably, but not certainly need to be starting as a kid. So yeah, I'd say for me, fairly love at first sight. It took me a long time to get it. And what I mean by that is like I knew that I personally wanted to be very good, but I don't think I had the right approach to jujitsu as well as the right mentors in the very, very beginning um, to get me to those stages. And it's really been a continuous evolution mentally more than technically of how do I need to approach this puzzle to be able to produce a high level adult black belt competitor. And if I look back at myself 10 years ago, I'm a completely different person. I mean, completely. And that's where I was already starting. I think 10 years ago, I was already doing commentary for the IBJJF Worlds. I mean, and if you take that me and go to me today, it's a completely different person. And if you go back 20 years, I mean, I don't even recognize that person whatsoever. So that's kind of a little bit about my personal journey and through jujitsu. Yeah.
Yeah. So when do you feel that you had the spark and say, you know what, I think I want to do this for a living. I think I want to become an instructor. How did this come about? Did you start assisting, being an assistant in school? How did it go?
I love teaching. That is my ultimate passion. I get a lot of satisfaction at the end of the day watching somebody progress. So that part has always been in me. And I wanted to be a music teacher. When I was starting jujitsu, I was in college to become a high school band director. And, I always liked music, but I think liked is the best word. whereas I loved jujitsu. So how I like to say it is I love teaching and I liked music, but I love teaching and I love jujitsu. It was just like a upgrade. There were many things that I found as a huge advantage as somebody who loves teaching, as the domain being jujitsu, which is I can take somebody from when they're a kid to do exactly what I've done with Nolan over the course of somebody's entire life. As a teacher, it's never good enough for me. If I give somebody a lesson and they improve and they do well at a tournament, let's say they're in town, they take a lesson with me and then they use that at a tournament, it's not enough for me. I want to be able to start from the very beginning, and I want 10 years or more with a student. And just that idea of 10 years like minimum, there's very few domains out there that enable this type of thing. In music, as a high school band director, why I liked it is because I had 4 years potentially with the same person from freshman all the way to senior. And it's like with jujitsu, there's no limit on the time. It's entire lives. That's what I really, really liked about it. And that's how I started to pivot a little bit more towards jujitsu and have that take over as opposed to music. So yeah, definitely kind of tapped into my love for teaching. And jujitsu just happens to be the most awesome, almost under the radar type of thing to mentor somebody their entire lives. If you're a grade school teacher, I don't know how they do it because as a teacher, having 1 year with a student and then having a whole different crop of people the next year, a whole different crop of people the next year, there is no way that you can't end up jaded. 100%. It's too many people. We cannot care about this many people in our lives. Our brains have space for about 150 people in our lives to care about. We're just not wired to go much higher than that. And like the way that so many other domains that you can teach in, even other sports, they don't enable that. I coach my son baseball, and it's like every single year he has a different coach. How are you going to build the in-depth relationship to be able to gradually shape, gradually, as I mentioned before with the kind of the mental thing, it's so gradual what I do. You won't even see it because it's not obvious. It's not a quote written on a wall. It's not a meme written over a sunset or a lion or a shark. It's very, very subtle. And I need time to be able for that to wear off. And yeah, jujitsu is just so perfect in this regard.
And you started teaching, showing stuff online. I remember watching you putting videos when you were a purple belt, right?
Yes.
And I always been a little bit more of a jiu-jitsu nerd in a way of understanding. So I did like your style and approach of just being systematic. And that's something that I started jiu-jitsu in 1989. I really enjoy your approach of like the wave of the UFC, right? The UFC and then the Ultimate Fighter, and I did see that. But in Brazil was like a different wave, and in Rio, where I'm from, 1991 was the kind of like the year that really with the Vale Tudo Jiu-Jitsu against Luta Livre that really took off. And then the UFC had an impact in Brazil, yeah, but 91, in my honest opinion, was more powerful
Interesting.
for us there and a lot of people from there because I did notice the shift in everything from the city to press and all that stuff. And then 93, that was UFC first nationals, not by CBJJ. Under Pederneiras did one the year before, called Mameluki Nationals. So that was 93.
And then in
That
94, you have the Brazilian nationals. Yeah.
exactly.
That's
So there was
interesting that
there was
like
that
hearing their
momentum.
perspective on that.
Yeah, so there was that momentum of that UFC, and then right around the same time towards the end, they had Renzo versus Valide, and it was like in the
Yeah.
news. So that was like a
Mm.
big thing. So 93 was a like validation year for jiu-jitsu in Brazil, but that started, in my opinion, in
A
91
little
because
bit before
they
then.
show the this fight on global the national channel. And from there, man, I just started noticing schools popping up everywhere, and then 94, and then boom, and just took off from there. So you had the idea of start teaching online too early, and how was your approach? Because you just wasn't systematic back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
There's
think there
something
were
that I feel
two.
like it started to more systematic when you came to the US, developing and so forth.
Yeah. So first, I think I should mention that, like I said, that I think it was in 2010, maybe 2009, but I think it was 2010, is a completely different me. Like it doesn't, my jujitsu philosophy, that's the main thing that's evolved, is my philosophy and approach to jujitsu has changed so dramatically that it's not even like what I do now, not even close. Like there are some elements of that, but I think it innovated in two different ways. One is what you mentioned before, is my frustration with a lack of systemization at the time in jujitsu. And so what I did is I attempted to organize it in a lesson format. Lesson one, learn this. Lesson two, learn this, and took it through a progression. Now, as I was doing this, I very quickly realized that it's pretty easy to pick your first couple of lessons. And then as you continue to go, it's like, well, why couldn't I go in this direction or in this direction or in this direction? And all of those directions were logical directions. And I couldn't figure out how to solve this problem with the format in which I was doing it, which was on YouTube. So I actually created a now defunct website called jujitsu.net, which graphed all of jujitsu. And this was a result of the frustration that I felt with this linear progression with lessons. And what I mean by graph, I don't think people know. And I mean graph in the terms of graph theory with nodes and edges. In the common tongue, it might be a mind map where you have the circle that represents the technique, an edge that represents, okay, you're going here,
Mm-hmm.
and then a new technique, even though that's not how I did it. It's always position, edge to technique, edge to a new position. It was three nodes and edges linked together to make one thing. But what this enabled is me to solve the problem that I had with those YouTube videos, which is if you wanted to go this different direction, it would form a curriculum in priority order based on that move, or you could click try another way from this position. It would take you to the second priority position and then take you through a customized curriculum based on that. It was completely adaptable from any point in jiu-jitsu. The graph was absolutely massive. It was really only probably 2,000 techniques. It was very, very ahead of its time. And I mostly did it for me. That's the problem that I've had with a lot of what I did. I did it because I wanted to see if it would satisfy my creative kind of drive to do this type of thing. And then, like, once I was like, yeah, this is the way to do it, I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with that. Let's move on to the next thing. So back to the original thing, I think that those videos innovated in two ways. That was one of them. And it doesn't stand out now. But the other one, which also will not stand out now, is that I was reverse engineering techniques from videos. And I was using primarily Hodger Gracie, but some others, as like, Hodger is doing this. Let's figure out what he's doing. And then I would teach and show an actual competition example from the best in the sport of this working. So it had this systematized process and then also included competition videos. And this is largely how I have learned. I have learned almost all of my current philosophies and techniques exclusively from watching videos, specifically IBJJF videos. I watch almost every single one. I include them in my classes when I teach. Probably 80% of classes have an analysis that we end on where we're actually watching matches and talking about the rules, talking about the strategies, talking about the techniques. And that's one way in which I rub off on people because it's not so much like the techniques, it's my attitude towards the techniques that rubs off on people. Like, hey guys, this is kind of an exotic move. Let's take a look at it anyway. You don't really need to know this one. And conversely, oh, this technique, happens almost every single match. Let's pull up another match. Let's see if this happens in this match. Oh, see, look, told you it happened. Like they're picking up on my attitudes, on what is important, what is less important. I'm one of those instructors that believes that not every technique is equal. I think there are some that are more important and some that are less important. A lot of that is communicated through the analysis. But anyways, going back to what we were talking about, which is the purple belt videos, is that's kind of laid the seed for me to eventually meander this very ugly path to figuring out what does it take to actually take somebody from scratch where you're responsible for it, to take them from nothing, tabula rasa, kid day one, all the way to elite adult black belt. And that has been, a constant process that's still continuing to evolve almost every day, technically, philosophically, and mentally as well.
Yeah, and I really like this approach. I do the same. I do share footage in class. I do show footage in seminars because there's nothing more like there's no more, I don't know, practical validation of like there's two world-class guys. This guy's trying to smooth, the other one's doing everything possible to stop him from doing, and he's still doing. So yes, that works. And someone that got me into videos, because back in the day in the 90s, there's not really much going on with videos besides some VHS. But Mark Lehman is one of the guys that he was one of the first ones that I saw that was studying. He had so much access. He had so many different VHS. So I would watch with him, and then like he's the one that really started to turn me like into like, see this here, rewind. So I started to develop my own style of studying too. But a
You
big
probably
influence
had a
from
whole
Mark.
whole crate full of VHS tapes, just like my
Yeah,
instructor did.
yeah,
It was very hard to get footage to study from. And
yeah.
and if
It's
you look at the time that I started to do it, I mean 2010, a few years
oh
ago, YouTube
yeah,
didn't exist before 2010. It takes a little bit of time for the videos to work, before the 5 minute limit is removed. Remember that from YouTube?
yeah,
Hang on, my dog's here wanting to say hello.
yeah. In the
Yeah, so I wasn't the first to do it, and I don't want to claim that I was the first. I was influenced by Jeff Joslin's technique series on BJ Penn. That was one of the ones that came out before me, and I'm like, why aren't we just learning jujitsu like this? And people have said this in about my videos as well. Even people that are my senior, like Lachlan, he's like, watching those videos was a breakthrough for me, and not because of the techniques. It's like, hey, you can just watch matches and figure out what they're doing. It had nothing to do with what I was showing, but just that idea, I think, was foreign at that time. And
yeah.
now I think it's commonplace. So it's kind of hard to see that in its time and place.
I don't know how much you know about Mark Lehman. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
much
a
about
little
it.
bit, yes.
Yeah,
Because Mark
but
Lehman was like one of the people that when I started was one of the people that was being talked about. You had Mark Lehman versus Horyong's kids. Like this was all kind of like going on, that type of thing when I started. So I'm from Southern California, but America overall is very like Horyong Gracie based. And you have the hero and the anti-hero in Mark Lehman, who turns out kind of like history reinterpreted was probably very, very innovative for his time and era.
yeah, he was. I mean, he did travel to Brazil a lot. He spent a lot of time there. However, very similar to you, a lot of his knowledge was from studying, and that's what I kind of picked up from him too. Like he would say this move, like this person does this move, this person does this move, this he would like know everyone, all best moves. So it was really cool to start like seeing patterns, and that's basically what I'm looking for to have like a catalog with my computer. I'm going to do a seminar on a specific topic, so I already have like, okay, I did like last week I did a seminar on just everything related to grabbing across with the pants, with the cross pants passing.
Yeah, that's
And so that's a man, that's a rabbit hole, that topic itself, because it's just there's so many possible variations and reactions from a person. So I start to pick and choose like whatever I see it, I'll just go and I save it on Instagram or whatever. And then at one point I download whatever I can. And then I start to show. And it's awesome when I can find the specific reactions that I'm looking for. And you need to know what you're looking for to. And
It's tough. It's tough to find any specific thing, isn't it? How much
it's time
footage you need to
consuming.
go through to be able to find, like, just try and find an armbar from the close guard, and you just have to watch random matches. I mean, how many matches do you have to watch to get any one move? And you kind of slowly build this library in your head of, oh, okay, Lucas, he does the cross pant grip. Eric Muniz, he does the cross pant grip. So you kind of get an idea of
Yeah.
of like who might be giving you these videos. And
Yeah.
one thing that's kind of interesting, like taking your example of the cross pant grip, it's like I think that many people have not even been exposed to this pass
Hmm.
because it's only a pass that really became more common. There were people doing it, but more common the last like 5 or 6 years. It's not like part of the beginners class. Hey guys, here's our basic guard passes. We have knee slice and we have cross pant grip. It's not something that somebody learns. And if that instructor is not watching videos and competition matches to understand, oh my gosh, Mikey Musumeshi's guard got passed with this, like we need to start
I
paying
showed this
attention
footage,
to this
as a matter of
pass.
fact.
There might be something there if you can pass Mikey's guard. That you're kind of left in the dust because things technically are changing very quickly. It's not that sometimes there are new positions being invented, but a lot of the time it just takes some existing thing and just
Just
blows it up
has
into this whole
evolved.
system that if you're not learning and keeping up with it, it's going to be tough for you to navigate this if you take 5 years off of doing that. And more than that is the philosophy that underpins like the general structure of the match. Like if I go back to like 2015, those matches are looking a little dated. They're showing a little bit of signs of rust. You go back to 2011, for me, unwatchable in the same way that I would watch a modern match that takes place today. It's not that the techniques are bad, but just like the depth of what each
It has
person
evolved.
needs to
Yeah.
look out for, the strategic evolution of how people approach matches. It can get dated really, really fast. And like you said, I like to go one step further than what you said, which is I like to watch everything in context. I generally stay away from like a shorter clip and highlights. I always talk about how I hate highlights because it doesn't really show the context in what's
For
going
sure.
on. And often this context is rules based and strategic. For example, just let's take a basic example. If we do double pulling, we come up and the guy's up by one advantage, and now there's 2 minutes left and he's still down that advantage, the guy on bottom. Well, now he opens up because he has to. There's 90 seconds left. He doesn't make the grips that he knows he should make, but he's just trying to make something happen. And then he gets countered with the pass and the back take and whatever it is. It's like with absent of that type of context, we can't really understand why this situation took place. We miss this plot line of he knew he was taking a risk. He took the risk and it didn't pay off. Whereas if you try and maybe take that out of that context, it might not be as easy to implement that particular technical aspect of that pass.
Yeah, 100%. And I always mention too of the difference between watching jujitsu and studying jujitsu. I see something, I'll save it so I can be like, oh, this is good for me to add as one of the examples. But if I want to study, absolutely, you have to watch the whole match. And
Yeah.
100% I agree. And the interesting thing with the cross pants passing, the first video that I show, because I we do the seminar, whatever I'm going to be showing, and then at the end I show some videos. At the very first one, I say like, guys, just to let you know, I didn't invent anything this year, and I show a video of Terere doing the pass in the 90s. So like this, people have been doing this for a long time. It's just it has evolved a lot. The possible reactions of what are you gonna do with it. I showed the footage. As a matter of fact, I saw Lucas too. I was at the Tampa Open last weekend, and I saw him there. So like, hey, by the way, I show footage of you less in a seminar yesterday. That was. him passing Mikey's guard, grabbing across, and then every time Mikey turns upside down, he does the rewind. He walks back, put his hip back on the floor, keep going again. So he did that. By the third time, he was able to pass. But I watched that match, the whole thing, to for sure to get the whole idea. It's absolutely 100%. I agree.
I think that you're kind of a rare breed, actually, because to find somebody with experience that is generation many generations of experience, like somebody with 20, 30 years of experience in America, these people tend to be, it's almost works against them because they are not keeping up with the modern, because their idea of what jujitsu is kind of gets entrenched and they don't keep up with the current techniques. For most people, if they say they've been doing jujitsu 30 years, I look at that as a negative, not a positive most of the time. In my head, I don't say it out loud, of course, but I think it on the inside. Because to have the depth of experience yet still keep up, that is we don't have this very much in America. We really, really don't with Americans. In Brazil, you're ahead of us in so many different ways. You talked about how like the revolution was in 91, and I'm saying it's in 2015, 2005, 2006 in America is when we really got going. I think that you guys are 15 years ahead of us in almost every aspect, and that kind of shows it. But so yeah, I think that is a very, very rare combination. It's like who do you have in America that has over 20 years experience, but also is keeping up and is on the competition scene, studying the techniques that the competitors are doing, and you can trace, look, Tay Today was doing it back in the day. And maybe Tay Today taught it to this person who taught it to that person, and then it got expanded, and then it blew up recently to where, like, I think if you're a top competitor and you're seeing that for the first time, I mean, you're going to get smoked. It happened to us. It happened to Nolan at Purple Belt, where we had not focused too much on that cross pant grip. And then we get Jefferson Gotru doing the cross pant grip to the weird side. So now it's like two levels of funky, and we lose the match. And it's like you have to be constantly adapting, because I don't think that any single person understands jujitsu in its entirety. We all have like pieces of the puzzle that make up the complete puzzle. But it's like you never know what you're deficient in. And watching matches is the way to kind of figure out at least the common patterns, so that the things that you are deficient in only are this important, where the things that you know very well are the more commonly occurring positions. And yeah, that cross pant grip, if you're an adult competitor, that's going to be a rough go. And I think there's a lot of people. When I teach that move, I say there is a good chance that the person that you're doing this to in the early rounds will have never, and I repeat, never had somebody do this pass to them. I mean, there's a fair shot at that, because in America we get a lot of people that are kind of like what I would call IBJJF skeptical. They kind of came up in an era where we do Vale Tudo, we do it for self-defense, but they're kind of like been pulled into the sport direction. They're not really that great in an MMA context. They're not really that great in a self-defense context, and they're not really that great in a jiu-jitsu context, but they do the tournaments. I think that's where a lot of people sit. And in America, anyway, I think this is way, 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 way less in Brazil.
Yeah, I would say I'm lucky too, because nowadays I don't teach as much. So I get to be a student a lot. So one of my students that's been with me for many, many years, Josh Rodriguez, he he's a lot more up to date in I study, but I don't study as much as he does. I study
But
other
you
things.
compete so often. You're at the tournaments, you're competing when Keem Tran throws his, trying to get into single X and ankle lock on you from AOJ, you are aware of it and squash it and pass. It's like just being there on the competition scene is incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. And I think it's actually kind of rare, as I said.
Yeah, for sure. And other topics that sometimes, I don't get to. For example, I'm decent with lapel, but the chances of you see me doing lapel in a competition are very slim. just because it's not my thing. But I learned over the years that I have, for example, half guard is not my thing. Actually, I'm pretty decent because I had to study a lot to show to my students and whoever wants to implement in their. I always talk about how everyone builds their own custom made playbook, and then you decide to pick and choose whatever systems and positions you want to implement. So I always being very open minded to study like all kinds of stuff. Just like I'll show whoever resonated with the message here and wants to implement it in their game. But there are a lot of things I tell them, man, if you see me playing half guard, probably it's not good. Someone got there, and but I do not put myself, maybe a knee shield sort of, but I have long legs. I'm flexible, so someone why I'm going to give that weapon away. So I think that's very important to people just pick and choose and see the systems that work for them based on body type. Do you give your 2 cents or opinions of systems that
Oh,
people should maybe like
yes.
look
Yeah,
into
and
it?
this is a great topic. Is that you were talking about lapel and how it's not for you, and we'll get back to your kind of question because it's so good. Um, which is, I think you need to know everything in order to do this small, narrow band of jujitsu that each one of us does. Like you mentioned, we each have a system, but in order to be able to enact this system, we really do need to know as much about the totality of jujitsu, at least on a surface level. You need to be able to like just do lapel. Doesn't mean you can do it in a tournament against your peers that challenge you, but you should really, for all the positions, you should know the crucifix, even if you don't do the crucifix. You should know how to play underhook half guard, at least on a very cursorily low level, demonstration level, let's call it, because your opponents are going to be throwing all of the stuff at you. You can't choose what your opponent's good at. And the first thing that you need to do in order to counter something is know it. That's the first thing I always do. Oh, I can't stop this pass. All right. Well, good. Do the pass. I don't give any sort of counters. That's not my mentality. It's like just learn the pass. And then through learning the pass, did you find it successful or did you find it difficult? If you found it successful, then great. You just added a new pass that can't be stopped. Good for you. Wonderful. But most of the time, it's like, man, I can't do this pass when they do this and that. And then it's like, okay, well, do this and that when you're on the bottom and they try the pass, and then grow your knowledge from there. So you need to know everything to be able to do these one little, our little specialties. But more in kind of what you were saying is I'm a lot more opinionated about what you were saying with my students. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I all let them choose their own path, but I give a very, very strong opinion as to the types of areas, not one particular thing. I do have a set of techniques that I emphasize. However, as long as it agrees philosophically with what I feel is jujitsu that can scale to the highest level, then we're good. You had brought up half guard where you're like, yeah, I don't like half guard. And you are not the typical, your master's five, right? Five? Yeah, five.
Yes.
You are not the typical Masters 5 competitor. You're at the top of the heap for Masters 5. At the middle and lower part, they're all doing a deep half guard. They're all doing underhook half guard. I think it's a better philosophy to have distance management as one thing. And I'm going to give very, very sharp opinions as to why I think that is and why I think that you should develop it. Sure, you can make De La Hiva into De La Hiva X your thing. Sure, you can make collar and sleeve your thing. Sure, you can make getting into single leg X your thing. You have like the ability to shape as long as I'm steering the ship in the general direction. And at the end of the day, if you're too old and stubborn to take my advice, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to like I just lectured my deep half guard player at the gym how deep half guard he shouldn't have as his primary thing, maybe as a tool, I guess. But like you're kind of fighting an uphill battle if you're trying to scale it to the highest level. There's certain things that I really fundamentally believe, such as bottom is better in jujitsu. I think this is like a fundamental in competitive jujitsu, in sport jujitsu, a term I don't like, but whatever. um, when you have this fundamental premise of bottom is better, it's not saying that being on top is bad. You just need to be on top and have something to show for it. So, for example, double pulling up, this is okay. This is a neutral trade-off, inferior position for being on top, but you get that advantage for being on top. This is kind of like the root level philosophy that can shape our technique. If bottom is better, both people are probably going to try and race to the bottom because, you either, if you want to come on top, you have to have something to show for it, that advantage. But this impacts the positions that you can play. We can't make grip here, wait a few moments, snap them down, and then pull into a nice half guard, for example. Pulling quickly influences what positions you're going to be able to play afterward. For example, two sleeves might be a little hard. If you're trying to pull super quick, you're just trying to, fall to the ground super fast. You're probably not going to have two sleeves. You're probably going to need to establish something like De La Hiva, or if you're a legs in between guy, maybe going into single X or something like this. But the root level philosophy is going to it's going to dictate which techniques we eventually choose and systems to choose to get good at. And if there's anything that I do differently, it's in those opinions of like these various systems. And sometimes a system is kind of like on the fence, and I'll try and communicate that with my tone when I'm analyzing videos or we're talking about it in class or out of class. So yes, it's very strong opinion. And this is why I think it would be hard for me to go and back and do commentary, like for even though I'm not really a part of that with Flow's takeover. Um, I think it would be hard because I've been 10 years of just giving these very, very pointed opinions on positions. And then you have to go back to like being neutral about what people are doing when you're doing commentary. You're trying to showcase what they are doing, as opposed to giving your opinion on a particular position, which would be disrespectful in that type of context.
And one thing that I mentioned, people ask, and I would assume your answer about studying opponents before. So I interview a bunch of people, including high level guys that say like, I don't like to watch, I don't watch.
Yeah.
However, someone in the team is studying for them, right? So some people are like, no, I just like to show up. Or like, man, there's a reason why sports, NBA, NFL, they spend millions of dollars just analyzing footage. And I'm personally being, of course, a jiu-jitsu nerd. If I'm going to compete, I mentioned like, well, I'm not going to watch highlights. I'm going to watch full matches. And I'm
Yeah,
just
not
looking for
highlights.
patterns, just patterns. That's what I'm not like, watch the try. No, I just need to know, is that a fast pull? Which leg,
Yeah, yeah,
like
100%.
forward, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, you could take just that statement, and I know that you understand jujitsu. Like right there, what you just said. How does he pull guard? Does he pull guard? Does he pull fast? Does he pull slow? Like those are the first pieces of information that you want in a match. Does he pull fast? Does he pull slow? And then maybe in those initial moments, what is he looking for as his primary sequences? And that's, probably 80% of what you're gaining out of it. Yeah, 100%. I love that so much. I'm going to show that clip to my students right there. Just be like, this is the type of thing that you want to know, because this dictates his understanding of jujitsu on a strategic sense. It shows you what types of positions you're likely to encounter in the opening moments, and the opening
Mm-hmm.
moments are the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to fast pull you fast pull? Are you planning on coming up? What positions are you going to try for, and how are you going to deny that? Like, it's everything. Are we going to try and pass loose? Are we going to try and pass close? All of it, like just very generic type of stuff. But answering your question, I mean, Jiu-jitsu comes in two types: ex prison tatted up, and they come in nerds. We are both clearly nerds. Like the nerds are going to study. And I've encountered the same level of resistance primarily with Brazilians, to be honest. We've had a lot of high level Brazilians come through our gym. We're kind of like Switzerland. We welcome everybody. We're a lot of people's first stop when they come into America to get their, feet on the ground to help get established. And a lot of those, but not all, are resistant to like looking at footage of their opponent. They're just like, I'm just going to kill him. I don't like to think about it too much. And I just go in there. And it's like, okay, I'm here to help you and in your process. I think it's better to study. It's better to know than to not know. Obviously, there is something about overstudying and being intimidated by the person. There's like a
100%.
balance that needs to be had there. And segregating out the roles can be very important. Where I'm a coach, my role is different than that of the athlete. I often explain Nolan and I as this. It's Nolan's job to be as delusional as all can be. He's going, I'm going to go in there and submit him and all this. I'm just going to applaud to him. And I'm like, whoa, 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 Nolan, this guy can beat you right now. I'm a little bit more of the realist. I'm more like the paranoid dictator in South America. Where's the uprising coming from? Is it going to be him? Is it going to be him? And maybe I even give too much credence or credibility to what they're going to do, which is the way you want to do it. You always want to assume that that's the person that's going to overthrow your government, so to speak. Um, but yes, there is a role of coach to athlete in this. I would prefer that the athlete study for sure to get a general sense of what their strong positions are and what their non-strong positions are. Without studying Adam Orzinski, I don't think Nolan's victory comes. Maybe it does because he had in him the capability to omoplata and finish omoplata against Adam because of how Adam approaches things and how Nolan approaches things. And it's a very, very bad clash for Adam. But still, the studying of the matches and knowing exactly what Adam's going to do in every single position is what enabled the victory. And maybe at some point in the future, I'll analyze that and talk about that match specifically. But that's an hour-long conversation, how that was reached and the technical and strategic choices that were reached in that match. Um, so I again always study, but that balance you need to be aware of with the person as well. There's people that are not too secure in themselves, and people who are not secure in themselves, they're going to struggle as athletes in general because we need to have a lot of self-belief as athletes. But if that person does struggle with that, probably studying and watching, this person ankle lock everybody 100 times over is probably a bad thing. Know that they do the ankle lock, work on your ankle lock defenses. I would prefer to get it out in the open to talk about it, to bring out the boogeyman out of the closet and deconstruct, look at where they're human because nobody is mistake free, both technically, strategically, physically sometimes. Physically, they can kind of wilt. Yeah, that's kind of my take on that situation. Always study.
I had one time I had an interview with Johnny Grippo, and it was really cool what he said that I mentioned to him when he was a purple belt, he was in the finals of the Pans with one of my students, and fast-paced kid. It was one of those crazy matches, but and it just happened. There was a scramble, boom. He took my students back and then kind of stayed there. By the time he got out, he didn't have time. But and then after that, he said like, I have a notebook with the strength and weakness of all the main people of the division. So he mentioned how during the collar belts, he would just overstudy. Like you do everything. I'm gonna do this, that. Okay, and said. And then when he got to the black belt, I kept doing it and I started to, at one point it wasn't serving him anymore because said like I started to completely forget about my business and I'm 100% focused. What do I have to, what about them? What are they doing? So it's like it wasn't working that approach anymore. So there is a limit. There's a limit that you don't want to pass to the point that now you're not even thinking about your game. It's just 100% thinking too much on the other person, and that can definitely it can throw you off. And what you mentioned about if I start noticing that some, I call the negative, the dark passenger, the negative voice start to kick in, like, oh, what if da, 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 da. If I feel that this is coming too much, I'm like, man, I probably just watched too much. It's okay. But one of the things I have a lot of conversations with myself when I'm watching the video, and as soon as I see something great happen, I just automatically, if it's gonna happen, I don't know, but I just tell myself, well, he's not gonna do this to me. So I just tell that. Maybe he will, but in my mind, I try to create the scenario like, well, he's not going to, the dude was completely unaware, bad posture, he's not grabbing properly. So I need to break down like why that happened in the first place. So like, yeah, he had a horrible position. Of course, he's going to have a highlight here, but if someone has a proper position, maybe that wouldn't be happening. So I agree with the overstudying. It can be tricky.
Yeah. Speaking of Johnny, it's kind of an interesting little side discussion. First, Johnny is very, very intelligent. You talk with him for 5 minutes, you'll figure out that you're talking to a very smart person. And I remember his notebook comment, especially when he was with Danaher, where he said, Danaher, have it and keep the notebook and write down everybody. And, at a certain point, he realized that it probably was more net negative than net positive. But this is kind of an interesting little tangent, which is like, but the studying still got him to where he is. As we speak right now, he's in the
100%.
finals of Nogi Worlds. He ended up in a great place. And who's to say, even though he doesn't do it today, who's to say that that didn't contribute to him
100%.
getting to where he is? Because maybe at different phases in our development, different things benefit us or don't benefit us in the same way. Like when we reach black belt, probably what benefits us more is watching videos. Probably doesn't benefit a new white belt as much who has no idea what's going on. So, I mean, I think back at how many things that I did over these 20 years that I would never do again, that I'm not going to teach my students in this way because I know it wasn't really the right path. Like, that includes technical, it includes strategic and everything. Like, think about how many cross strokes from the close guard I practice. But it's like, maybe it made my grips better so I could play this other position that I do play. I don't know. I mean, we don't have a control group and an experiment group and see where each one ends up and evaluate using statistics. A lot of the time, this bizarro stuff that we do to try and make it to elite, we're just trying. And that's one thing that I think Americans don't do is just try. Do you really want to be like a world champion? I don't think we have enough. But assuming that you accept that premise, I think I can always see it in people, in coaches and in athletes themselves. With the coaches, they're trying all this like wacky stuff, like where you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of an interesting idea. The really great coaches tend to have these like innovative like approaches that 10 years removed from what they were doing probably would never do it again the same way. But who's to say it didn't help them end up in the place that they ended up? So that's kind of how I feel a little bit about like Gianni's video study. I mean, you can talk to him, as I mentioned, and realize that you're talking with somebody who's very intellectual about jujitsu, and then on top of that has good physicality to go with it, and good mentality to go with it, and that's why he's right now one of the best nogi guys out there. So yeah, that's kind of like an interesting little side tangent on that, I think.
So let's talk about the IBJJF rankings.
Yeah.
A project that you started. I don't know. It was previously a different person that started IBJJF
Yes,
rankings.
correct. So maybe around 10 years ago, IBJJFrankings.com was not us. It was owned by somebody else. I don't even know who it was, but it was very influential for us and for me personally and for jiu-jitsu as a whole because they came up at a time where there was no subjective or no objective seeding process and ranking process in the IBJJF. They came out with a way to rank athletes based on medal counts. And it became very influential. I use this tool a lot to help like understand what competitors had achieved. And when I was doing commentary, there was no place to easily go to check out, oh, this person took second place at Pans 4 years ago, or just get a general sense of how good they were. So I think that the IBJJF saw this ranking system that the IBJJF rankings formerly did, and they essentially copied it. In all of its essence, it is the same system that they currently use. You get such and such points for earning a gold medal, such and such points for getting a silver medal, and the prestige of the tournament and how recent it is. They adjusted it to taste, but it's in essence the same thing. So that was a huge improvement because previously, I'm sure you remember, they had the bracket meetings where they would just all go in a room and how they invited these people, I don't know, because I'm not invited. They would invite Fabio Gurgel, they would invite Lloyd Irvin, the major team leaders, and they would agree on the brackets. And this is so not the way to go because everybody is kind of jockeying for their own little angle for their
Very
competitor to.
hostile, by the way. I've been in those rooms before. I'm like,
Oh,
dude,
you
it's
were?
not for
Hang on one
me.
second.
Yeah.
Oh, keep talking. I can hear you.
Yeah. Went a couple of times, but like, you know what? It's
Oh
not my
man,
thing.
I would have loved to have been in those rooms.
It's a disaster, man. Oh my God.
But don't you agree, in all of its flawed form, that the current system that the IBJJF uses is infinitely better than getting everybody
Absolutely.
in a room together?
No, because it's everyone looking for their best interest,
Of
right? So
course.
I want this guy here. No, I don't want this guy here. This guy, and it was like, it's the whole day to get the thing done instead of auto load. Boom. That's it. Just put the
Yeah.
system, and there was all day and people getting into it, people almost getting in fights. I was, my God, but that's how it was back in the day or whatever.
That's
And
not
I'm
even
glad
that
that
long
it
ago.
changed. Yeah, but back in the day, I'm saying like bra from
Same.
Brazil, all that
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So I'm glad that is gone for sure.
Yeah, but now, I don't know how long we've been on the current system, but maybe we'll say 10 years feels about right. Um, it's very evident the flaws in this system. The most annoying of which to everybody is that you can be rewarded for not doing anything. You just show up at the tournament and in the masters categories, in the extremes of the weight classes, and especially at the international opens, you go to, some of them, there's not that many competitors. You can just default gold and you have a whole bunch of points to impact your seeding. And you do get people that travel the entire world accumulating all of these default medals so they can get this high ranking. And why that matters is it impacts the seeding. Seeding, of course, as you know, is related to their ranking system, but not exactly the same because they factor Grand Slam points first and former world champions, they give a little bit of credence. But it's a very flawed system. Not only default goals, that's the most like annoying one where we see on Instagram the person claiming that they won the gold medal, and but it turns out there's nobody in the division, or they took
Extra
four
points when
golds.
it's yeah, exactly. Especially
They
when it's
took
like
four golds,
double
but only
gold.
one of them had one match attached to it. I mean, yeah, this is everywhere. We all see this type of problem. But it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. It's a little bit more nuanced. You can win an international open and beat some very, very good guys, or do an international open and beat some like people that are entering the tournament for the first time, and they're still worth the same amount of points. So it gets a little bit more subtle, even when somebody's not just abusing the system, which there are people in the adult black belt division who abuse it. So what IBJJF rankings is with Will Weiser and myself is an attempt to rectify this system. So what we've done is we've built a customized ELO system that we call the Weishart algorithm, where it's based on ELO, like how it is in chess, where it gives you a rating based on the statistics of your competition record. So if you've beaten a whole bunch of really good people, your rating will be high. If you beat a bunch of really okay people, your rating will be good, but not fantastic. If you lose to a really, really good guy, you'll go down a little bit. If you beat a really, really good guy, you'll go up a lot of it. So every single match line item is rated using statistics, and it's just your competition record. And the only way that you can advance your rating is by winning matches. And there's a lot of very thoughtful things that we've done to consider the belt ranking, how it manages your rating through the different belts, how it manages your rating in different age categories. Yeah, so what we've done is we've used data to inform all of this. The offset between an adult and a Masters 1 or a Masters 1 and a Masters 2 is all calculated using very cold objective data. So what you get is you get a system where the ELO score using our customized thing is cross comparable. So you can compare your Masters 4 rating and have a pretty good indication of how you're going to do in Masters 1 if you choose to do that. Or if you're Masters 2 and you are going up to Masters 3, where you'll fall into that category. And additionally, you can compare through the belt. So if you're a blue belt and you want to know your statistical odds of beating a brown belt that's, let's say you're above average blue belt, how does it go with a below average brown belt? We can spit those statistics out for you. And again, it's all calculated using data. So reform of the IBJJF official system is what we're after. That's our primary goal. We're not selling this. We will give this system to the IBJJF should they want it. There are also other reasons that we have started this project. That's our number one reason. Our number two reason is that there is no archival anything related to the IBJJF, which we find a travesty. If you go and you win this tournament, the only thing that remains is the first, second, and third players. There's no log of what happened with each individual match, no understanding of how it took place. So the brackets are destroyed. They are not preserved anywhere. So what we are doing is we are preserving all of your competition results. So all of that blood, sweat, tears that you've put into this art, we feel should be remembered for all of time. So we record every single match in IBJJF and rate every single match from Master 7 white belt. Interestingly, there's no Master 7 white belts, by the way, all the way to, Master 7 black belt. So for everybody. And the third thing is a little bit more of my personal take. I want to reduce ignorance and increase enjoyment of the sport. Particularly in America, I find that we're a pretty ignorant competitor base. And I hope to, through this ranking system, make it so we shine light where there is darkness. And where you reduce ignorance, you're going to increase enjoyment. The reason that I think that a lot of people don't enjoy watching is they have no idea what they're watching. And so there is a reduced ignorance component of it. For example, one way that I feel that reducing ignorance and increasing enjoyment will happen is that we are logging every single live stream match and identifying it with your profile. So if you competed at the Orange County Open and they did a live stream, you'll see your competition record. You can click on the YouTube video link and it takes you right to your particular match. We see this as a very, very valuable service to the community, because how people are going to use it is they're going to start to study their opponents as they enter the tournament. And we only see that as reducing the amount of ignorance that is in American Jiu-Jitsu. I feel that people really need to buy in more to the IBJJF ecosystem, because that is where the top competitors are, read, AKA Brazilians. And having access to that type of information is only going to do good things. We're also linking flow grappling. If there is a flow link, we're going to provide a little link. Or actually, we already do. You click on it, it does the search for you within flow grappling. It is behind a paywall. But I mean, just this week, we added 35,000 free videos attached to your very specific matches. So you click the match,
massive
it shows up.
Work, dude.
Yeah, it's tireless. I gave a podcast interview earlier this week. It was on no sleep because I'm not sleeping, because I'm getting all the timestamps lined up for those video matches.
Damn, dude.
But it is something that needs to be done, and ultimately will increase enjoyment. And through our Instagram, I'm providing coverage of the international opens. I think it's absolutely nuts that nobody in the American mediascape is covering the international opens. And that's where jiu-jitsu lives and breathes. That's where the average person has their connection to high-level jiu-jitsu. And there's so many elite people that compete every freaking week at the 2 to 3 tournaments that they run every week. There's so many storylines that you can explore, so many interesting technical, strategic, personality things as the personalities clash and they build storylines. It's all built in the international opens. So that's part of the reduce ignorance component of it, which is providing coverage for international opens. Nobody's doing it on the American side. So those are kind of the 3 main objectives with this type of thing that we're doing. If you want to follow along, our website, ibjjfrankings.com. And for the coverage, Instagram stories, very temporary, 24 hours, they go away. That's the only way that it can be done because it's like a war zone trying to cover three tournaments at the same time. So,
No
yeah,
kidding. So, getting close to the end of the interview, let me just get some different questions here. I don't know if you have the habit of reading, consuming audiobooks. Do you have the habit of doing?
I do. Audiobooks, Audible. I am a member of Audible. I listen to an audiobook every single night that I fall asleep. I fall asleep to an audiobook. Not jujitsu audiobooks. I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
that there are that many. But yes. Um,
Yeah, I want
uh,
to ask you what is, of course, there's always different books for different people and also books that hit you in different moments of your life. But
yes.
what do you feel that it's one of the most impactful books that
Easy.
you've read and why?
Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. That book is transformative because of its perspective shift. Some of the most valuable insights in jiu-jitsu and in life are when you like completely change your perspective. It really just said one thing is that like we for most of our experience have evolved as hunter-gatherers, and our brains and our bodies are wired for that type of thing, yet we are living in a modern civilized society, and this type of thing can get hijacked in various ways. The ways that fictions, whether it's money, whether it's, sorry to offend, whether it's religion, whether it's nations, whether it's human rights, these are all fictions that we make up. Some of them are good, some of them are great fictions. I love human rights, I'm all for human rights, but it does not exist except in our collective imaginations as humans. Understanding the role that these fictions have played in our development as a species, I mean, so incredibly transformative. It's of a genre that you might call big history, where you're not learning about the kings and the queens and this battle. You're not even learning about this society or that society, the ancient, Sumer. You're not learning about Sumer, Egypt, or anything. You zoom back and take a holistic view, a zoomed out view of human, not history, because history only goes back to when writing and reading was developed, but even before that, all prehistory. And have found that incredibly, incredibly valuable.
Beautiful. And what year did you open your academy?
Gosh, you're testing me. 2012, I want to say.
Cool. So if you have to give an advice for Dan in 2012 that is starting the school, you went back there and give him the advice to be like, yo, dude, if I were you, I'll do this, I will not do this. So what is one thing you could say to your younger version that was opening the school?
It's kind of like what we were talking about with Gianni Grippo. Is like today, if you transport me back in time, I would not do it the same way because I did all these wrong routes and, experimentations that didn't work out. And it eventually led me to where I am. No major mistakes or anything like this. There just haven't been that type of pitfalls along the road. But like, there's definitely ways in like running the class and things like this that I would do differently today. But maybe I don't reach where I am today if I change that. I think we can all kind of identify with that to a certain degree. We might have made mistakes in our past outside of jujitsu, but it's like it kind of forms who you are
Mm-hmm.
today. I don't have many scars. I mean, not most, this is wrong, but many people that started out with me back then, I mean, they're still part of my life. They're part of the gym. And if they're not part of the gym, I see them frequently because they moved, 4 cities away and trained at a different place. I mean, largely the takeaway was so positive that it's hard to say, like, go back and do it again. Um, Probably what I would have liked is maybe just with the accepting of the premise that the IBJJF is the top competitor base and we should start to optimize for the IBJJF. To even get to that step is a place where I don't think many people are. It takes a long time to get to that spot. And then it's like, okay, I'm at that spot mentally. Now what do I need to do to climb to the top of the ladder? Like what does from here to there look like? And that's a whole nother journey as well, because I think that most people are not doing something that can even have the possibility of producing that. So yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied with how it turned out. Yeah, so no real complaints.
And last question, what are you currently excited about? What's going on professionally speaking too? So what are you currently excited about?
I mean, I'm excited for Euros. Um, and I'm excited going into this next competition series, this competition year with the majors with Nolan, because we did not get the world title. We got silver, which is great. It's fantastic. We lost to Eric, who's I don't think people have recognized that he's the one of the greatest of all time. And there are reasons for that, and that's a side tangent in and of itself why people he doesn't really get the recognition in the American side of things, on the American side of things. But I mean, yeah, we lost to Eric. But if you look at like the path, there's a definite path for him to get a world title within the next 3 years or so. So I'm looking forward to kind of ticking the box off of these major tournaments, Euros being the first one here. We have the Pans one already, and then going into Brazilian Nationals. He has a silver at Brazilian Nationals again to freaking Eric. It's just I have nothing but good things to say about him. He's just so amazing on all levels of jiu-jitsu, and that's the eventual mountain. I don't know if that's going to be the end arc is eventually go a different place than where Eric is right now. And then as he matures a little bit, go back and see if we can do it again with some maturity in the grappling. But that's a tough mountain to climb. But yes, Euros is what I'm looking forward to in the near future. So yeah, look for us there.
Cool. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time and chatting. Love to talk with Jiu-Jitsu nerds, and we can definitely keep going here for a while. And hopefully, everyone able to enjoy the Jiu-Jitsu nerds out there. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed. I appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks to everybody listening too.
Take care, brother. Cool, man. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
Yeah, it was fun.